What's up guys, I'm Robin Strickland, and today I'm going to be talking about the newest Sengoku release. It's going to be the Trimetal M-shaped Shinobi. So I don't know if you remember the Samurai by Sengoku, but that was actually their first M-shape release. And unlike the Samurai, which only had 2 metals, this one has 3. So it's an even crazier design. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how it plays on the string and whether it can deliver that Sengoku performance. But before I throw it, let's go ahead and take a closer look at the disc. So just first impressions of the Shinobi. Obviously there are 2 different colors of rims on it. One's brass and one's stainless steel. It's got a matte black finish, and of course it's got that really nice looking laser engraving on it. But anyway, let's look at the specs here. So the Shinobi comes in at 54.09 millimeters for the diameter, so that's pretty standard. Not quite full size, but like definitely in that area. I usually consider 55 to be full size, so you know, it's pretty much full size. The width is pretty wide at 46 millimeters, but of course, because of that M shape, not all of it's going to be usable. The weight of the Shinobi comes in at 64.8 grams, which is pretty standard for the competition yo-yos on the scene. Light enough to be fast, but usually if the ring placement is good, then the power won't be too negatively affected by the lighter weight. On the inside, we've got Sengoku's katana pads, which I quite like. If you watch any of my other reviews, they provide really good binds. The bearing is pretty standard though. It's the center track bearing, which is the industry standard. It's nothing exceptional, but it does provide long spin times and keeps that string in the middle, which is really desirable for those competition tracks. All right, with the interior and specs out of the way, let's go ahead and take a look at how it plays. Okay, so obviously the big question with a yo-yo like this is how does it play? It's got 2 unusual things about it. One is the M shape, and one is the fact that it has not one type of metal ring on it, but it's got 2. So the first thing that I want to talk about is a comparison between this and Sengoku's previous M-shaped yo-yo, so I kind of have something to base this off of, so I'm not just like shooting in the dark here. The previous M-shaped yo-yo that Sengoku made was the Bimetal Samurai, and you can check out my review on it in the description below. But this was a really crazy shape. It just went completely all in for that M shape. You can see it comes down really far here, and actually the stainless steel continues that M shape out beyond the edge. So Julio really just went all in for the M shape, completely committed to the crazy design, right? So this, the Shinobi, feels like a more refined version of the M shape, if that makes sense. Is essentially taking the original concept, and even though he added the unusual 3 metal design, it feels more refined, okay? And I think that's largely due to the shape. You can see that the M shape is much less extreme. It's not as if the interior metal ring here, it's not as if that extends out beyond the wall of the yo-yo. It's flush, and correspondingly the M shape is not as pronounced. Also, both the diameter and the width are slightly smaller, so while the Samurai essentially felt like a super wide in your hand, this feels more like a standard yo-yo. So I guess to sum that idea up in a couple of sentences, this takes the idea of a bimetal or trimetal M-shape yo-yo and really kind of refines it, and instead of just going all out and making a crazy design that really happened to work and play well with the Samurai, this is really dialing that design in and focusing on maximum competition performance. So I actually asked Julio directly, why did you make this yo-yo, right? Why did you make this weird trimetal M design? And his response was, the idea behind this is to explore the M shape further. Unlike the V shape that has been explored ad nauseum, this one feels fresh, and unlike the organic, this can challenge the V shape in competition supremacy. So that's kind of a big claim, right? That the M shape is good enough that it can actually challenge the tried and tested drop near style V shape for competition performance. My answer to that is yes, but in a slightly different way. Let me explain. Backing up a little bit, competition performance is a phrase that people assign to a certain set of characteristics in how a yo-yo plays. And pretty much everyone agrees that you want a couple of things for a well-performing yo-yo on the competition scene. The first is power. You want it to be able to spin a long time, you want it to be able to have a lot of that rotational inertia so it doesn't die on you. The second is stability. You want the yo-yo to be able to maintain its plane. Third is catchability. You want a yo-yo with a wide open catch zone so you can catch those inverted hops, you can catch those horizontal tricks. And given that to make it on the competition scene these days, you really need to be a well-rounded player and have a lot of variety in tricks, you're gonna need to have some horizontal performance, which also involves the necessity of some low walls. So really those 4 things are what makes or breaks a competition yo-yo. And Julio is right. Pretty much every competition yo-yo on the scene is a variation of a V shape, you know, kind of H shape, but more often V. There have been pretty much every variation that you can imagine. I mean, even the Sengoku's Kenshin Kibomi, that's a V shape. Classic. He's really trying to see how close to those 4 characteristics of excellent performance he can get out of a differently shaped yo-yo. So let's talk about the first characteristic that I mentioned. Power, okay? This is the Shinobi's strongest point. This is probably the most powerful yo-yo I've thrown, okay? It does not excel this well in other areas, but this is where it really shines. Okay, now I'm not sure if that's a function of the Trimetal construction or the M shape or a combination of all of those. This yo-yo comes back to your hand with a serious smack, even after long combos, right? You throw it hard, the combination with a good bearing and good pads, man, this thing comes back to your hand hard. And this is also really good for those hop tricks and those horizontal tricks because those really tax the power on the yo-yos. If you're moving the yo-yo fast, like you need to for horizontal, the yo-yo is going to die pretty quick if it doesn't have some serious power. So that is really excellent. This yo-yo is probably the best in that category I've ever tried. I don't have a drop near with me right now, but I really don't remember it being like this. This yo-yo is an absolute beast when it comes to that. I'm not going to tell you this yo-yo is the best yo-yo in the world. It's not as good in the other 3 categories as it is in that one. It's still good in those, but it's not like crazy good, okay? So I think the next one that I mentioned was stability. Now, this yo-yo is kind of interesting. Usually power and stability go absolutely hand in hand. They're pretty much the same thing in a lot of yo-yos because when a yo-yo starts to die, when it starts to spin more slowly as a result of losing its power, that's when it starts to tilt, right? So this yo-yo, when it's spinning strong, it really doesn't tilt that much. The stability is good, right? Where it starts to struggle a little bit is in the low RPM stability, which is interesting because if you watch my video on the Samurai, this yo-yo has pretty much the best low RPM stability that I've ever seen. And this yo-yo's low RPM stability isn't bad, but again, it's not like a crazy outlier like the power is on this. So again, throw this yo-yo hard, take advantage of its power. It's going to come back to your hand really hard. But if you do really tax the power that much, you know, throw like a whatever 2-minute combo or something, by the end of that, you're going to have to be a little more careful about its plane keeping. So the next category I mentioned is catchability. So this yo-yo, it does definitely have a wide open catch zone. In fact, its catch zone looks exactly like a V-shaped yo-yo because that's what it is, except that part, right? A good comparison to this would be like the shutter, okay? That's pretty much the industry standard. You see this, you can't use all of its width. If you put it next to like the shutter, you can see you can use pretty much all of that width. And you can't do that for the shutter. You can't use all of it. It's not a super wide catch zone, but it's certainly enough and it's pretty standard, especially if you're talking about H-shaped yo-yos. And of course it does have the low walls, just like a V-shaped yo-yo. In that respect, it's exactly the same. So when you're talking about how much string contact there is for horizontal tricks, this yo-yo is really good. The walls are very low. A possible 5th element to that list of what makes a good competition yo-yo is lightness. Because again, you need to be a well-rounded player. To do well in the competition scene, you're gonna need some speed tricks, right? So you generally want to have a yo-yo's weight below 67 grams. This comes in at 64.8, so it's pretty much in that range. It's definitely able to go fast, and again, the power is excellent, so it can keep going on those speed tricks really well. To sum up my thoughts on its performance, this yo-yo can definitely run with the big dogs as far as competition is concerned. I did try and mention as many of the cons as I noticed. The low RPM stability on yo-yos like the Samurai, maybe the drop near, it's probably a little bit better. But again, the power on this is really, really good at compensating that out because I've really thrown pretty much my entire repertoire at this yo-yo and it really always comes back to my hand with a thump. So then the other end of the spectrum, aside from competition yo-yos, is how much fun is this yo-yo to use, right? I've tried competition yo-yos that are just awesome. And for me, that's enough. But this yo definitely delivers a more unusual feeling than you're probably used to. After all, how many Trimetal M-shaped yo-yos have you tried before? Just as far as aesthetics are concerned, it has kind of like a classy vibe to it. Even though it is an unusual shape, it's a very refined version of it. And you know, the silver and black and then gold and black aesthetic when you look at it from different angles, you know, these are classy colors. It's not like it went crazy for the color scheme, although there is a pretty sick looking galaxy color. And obviously the laser engraving is super cool. But I know I mentioned this before, in contrast to this kind of refined look, the power on this thing is just raw, right? I mean, it feels just like, which is kind of neat to see in contrast with this classy shape. The matte finish is quite good for grinds. You can do horizontal palm grinds pretty well on this yo-yo because if you're doing those right, it's going to be at a slight angle. And you can see there's that perfect blasted finish. Do them at an angle on your palm. Not a lot of people do those. Personally, I love them. It does have a pretty good inner ring here. You can do your thumb grinds all day. Works well for that, especially because the interior of the cup is blasted as well. And just the last thing, talking about everyday use and fun tricks. It looks pretty sharp, but these rims are actually well-rounded. I know some people were a little intimidated by the Kenshin Kiwami in that respect. You can see the rims are pretty sharp. So all in all, what do I think of this yo-yo? This yo-yo, predictably from Sengoku, is really kind of an odd beast. It's got really good competition performance, right? It's got amazing power, it's got good stability, it's got good catchability, but it feels very different from anything else on the market, you know? And I think that's what Julio wanted to do with it. He wanted to challenge that V shape. He wanted to make something a little bit different. So really, the way I would describe this yo-yo is it feels like the Dropnir from a slightly altered universe, right? It does the same things that the V-shaped competition yo-yos do today very well. It just accomplishes that in a slightly different way. Plus, it's kitty approved. I think that just about wraps up this review. This is really kind of an interesting yo-yo to review, and I quite enjoyed seeing how it played. I'm looking forward to seeing what Sengoku puts out next, but until then, I'm out.